but we're also celebrating the birth of Joseph Smith. Now, we don't honor Joseph in the same way we honor the Savior by any stretch of the imagination. But he was born on the 23rd of December, and through Joseph Smith, we certainly come to know the Savior better. I thought that since we've been studying Doctrine and Covenants this year, and since we're ending our study of the Doctrine and Covenants, and since we've learned so much about church history and about Joseph Smith, I just thought it would be interesting to share a little bit about Joseph Smith and his birth in Sharon, Vermont. He was born in a small cabin that was owned by his mother's father. So his grandfather, Solomon Mack, owned the cabin. And I can just imagine that that was such a happy time for the Smith family to have this little baby born at Christmas time. My mom says that that's always been the happy memory for her, having a baby at Christmas time. So I'm sure it was for Lucy Mack Smith to also have that baby at Christmas time. And it must have been a happy thing. But happy Christmases were not to be Joseph's lot through most of his life. I'm just going to run through a few years. Tyler, maybe you can jot those down up here so people can keep track of them. But let's start with 1823. In December of 1823, Joseph was mourning the death of his older brother, Alvin. This brother that had such an impact on Joseph, was such an example to Joseph, someone Joseph looked to as a hero, and he died. In 1828, Joseph and Emma were mourning the loss of their first child who died. And that was at the same time that they were struggling with the disappearance of the 116 pages of the manuscript of the Book of Mormon that they had been translating and working on for so long, and now it was gone. And Joseph was, Joseph had lost the ability to translate, and he felt condemned by God. I mean, that was not a very happy time.
Can I interrupt you there for just a second?
I should get out of the way so that you can see the board.
I think it's interesting that they chose to name that firstborn son of theirs Alvin. And he died. Yeah. Named after Joseph's oldest brother.
Well, you can see the love that Joseph had for his brother to name his firstborn.
Absolutely.
Alvin. Let's take a look at 1832. And it was right at Christmas that Joseph has the revelation about the Civil War coming and the exact place the Civil War will start. Not only is this incredible evidence that Joseph was indeed a prophet, it's recorded in Doctrine and Covenants 87, but nothing like war to kind of ruin Christmas for you.
Merry Christmas. There's war coming.
I mean, that just wasn't the exact Christmas message that I'm sure Joseph Smith was hoping to receive. In 1833, he was grieving because of the expulsion of the saints from Jackson County. Then it was at Christmas time in 1837 that the small banks failed. Now, this was a failure that was happening nationwide, but it certainly affected the Kirtland Safety Society. And then people turned their hurt into anger and focused it on Joseph Smith. Even some of his dearest friends were turning against him. It was a time of hateful accusations and bitter apostasy. And that was all happening in December of 37. Then in December of 1838, Joseph was languishing in Liberty Jail. It was there he was spending this horrific winter, not just suffering physically, but suffering emotionally, suffering psychologically, as he was dealing with the fact that he was there because some of his very best friends had stabbed him in the back, had turned against him. In 1842, perhaps this, and I don't know, but I think that perhaps this must have been the hardest Christmas of all, because Emma delivered a son who died at birth, and it was on the day after Christmas. Joseph was born on the 23rd of December. They'd celebrated that birth. He must have been so excited to have a baby coming right at Christmas time. And then the day after Christmas, that baby came and died. How hard that would have been for Emma, how hard that would have been for Joseph. They lost other children too, and every death was so hard and painful. But to happen at Christmas time, I mean, that just really must have been difficult. Now, those weren't the only Christmases that Joseph had. He had happy Christmases as well. So let's mention 1835, because in his own journal, Joseph writes about sleighing with his children in the new fallen snow. Here's a prophet writing in his journal about spending the day going sleigh riding with his children in fresh new fallen snow. What a Christmas. What a Christmas to remember. He also talked about spending the entire day just with family. For Joseph, that was a rare thing, especially because he always was living in the homes of other people. But here he is saying, I spent the whole day with my family. That must have brought him great joy. Finally, let's talk about 1843. He says that it was full of caroling, visits with friends and family. It was full of delicious dinners. Now, this starts sounding a lot like our Christmas celebrations. It was full of good music, and it was full of dancing. And the cherry on the sundae, the cherry on top, was that Orrin Porter Rockwell, his dear friend, shows up at his door, having spent a year in prison in Missouri. And when he shows up right on Christmas to bring the prophet so much joy. So yeah, there were probably happy times as well as sad times.